Counter-Jihad Magazine, the magazine of the Counter-Jihad movement, dedicated to the principles of equality of all people before the law, freedom of speech, and freedom of conscience. Counter-Jihad Magazine resumes its look back at the enigmatic New Age cult leader Eric Allen Bell by beginning with the tale of EAB and his cars. On the 4th of July 2012, EAB made the announcement that his world was imploding because of his public statements about Islam, and so he was forced to sell his car. This received nationwide attention, with the Bob Smetana article being picked up by USA Today. What did not receive as much attention was that 7 months previously he had also sold his car. Eric announced that he had sold his BMW in 2011 to invest in his website Global One. Then, 7 months later, in 2012, he sold his Toyota SUV because of his position on Islam. Both times he received donations, particularly in 2012, when he issued a big thank you to all those keeping a roof over his head. Returning to 2012, EAB left the counter-jihad movement still without a car, but continued his tirades against Jews and evangelicals. He also indulged in bizarre conspiracy theories about Christians, the counter-jihad movement, and its leaders. This went on for weeks until he finally turned on the Jews with his gratuitously nasty Passover message and talk of Jewish supremacists controlling Hollywood and the U.S. government. This was still going on when, around April of 2013, an anonymous donor stepped up, and Eric was back in production on his movie American Infidel. No one knows who the anonymous donor is, or why anyone would invest in EAB after his walking out on 2 movie projects, followed by his irrational, bigoted outbursts about Jewish supremacists, Christians, Robert Spencer, Pamela Geller, and the counter-jihad movement in general. But Eric was flush again, eating in restaurants, and driving a car. Apparently, Eric was not prepared for the attention his new car received. He began to fret on Facebook over strangers asking him about his car. He then posted 5 times in less than 4 minutes that Jihad was trying to kill him. Is it possible he was trying to deflect his readers' attention away from the car and where it came from, and on to imaginary death threats from Jihad? What about the claims that Loonwatch was endangering his life? Together with the bounty, the death threats from Loonwatch, non-existent death threats from Pakistani newspapers, and death threats from Jihad, this is the 4th time Eric has seen imaginary death threats. Why didn't he tell anyone about the number on the bounty? Why did he say it was for 10 million rupees? How did he go from begging us for money to becoming financially independent after all of his Jew talk? Who does Eric do business with? Since we know Eric will never make this movie, did he return the money invested by the anonymous donor? Unfortunately, this pattern of boasting, exaggerating, misrepresentation, and just plain mystery continue into his businesses and movies. The stupefying effect Eric has on people is comparable only to that of a cult leader. How is it that he was able to get so many people to see the number 1 quadrillion as 10 million? One gets an idea of what it's like in the cult of EAB by talking to his followers, like Clark Banner. Clark Banner became hysterical when the number on the bounty was pointed out to him, and he insisted it was 10 million written as a crore. Today he has a new rationale for the number on the bounty, and this is reminiscent of EAB's persuading Clark that Eric's Jewish conspiracy theory talk was acceptable. EAB is not only deeply involved in the New Age, which is full of bad gurus, cult leaders, quacks, frauds, and cranks, but he lies about this. Eric has been challenged over his New Age beliefs for years, but every time is like the first time. He has no idea why anyone would think this of him.
I'm in Southern California right now, but I spent some time in Murfreesboro, Tennessee, making a documentary. And I realized, there's one tiny little sort of New Agey store in town with crystals and probably not the type of place I would go to in LA just because we have so many other options. But I walk in and they're like, it's the Global One TV guy.
Oh, really?
And I realized...
You will notice that he never told us he branded his website as New Age. From the beginning, Global One was concerned with not science, but psychics. Indeed, Fate in Focus, an online psychic reading service owned by EAB that employed well-known psychic Jeremiah Schuyler, may have been a project of Global One. The new movie Eric is trying to get funding for, called Selling the Future, is almost certainly this movie, Psychic.con, which Eric has had in the pipeline since 2009. Eric is still running ads for online psychic readings at Global One.
Indeed.
There is also lavish praise for the movie What the Bleep. What the Bleep has been called an infomercial for Ramtha. What the Bleep was made by Ramtha students about what they learned from Ramtha. Jay-Z Knight, who is Ramtha, is thanked in the credits of What the Bleep. Ramtha is in the movie repeatedly. EAB has twice sidestepped a connection of Ramtha to What the Bleep while still continuing to endorse the film. Eric promotes the film What the Bleep at Global One by posting a clip of Joe Dispenza, a teacher at Ramtha School of Enlightenment. He also praises Dr. Emoto.
This is not science. We have two eyes. Why? We need to, to be double blind. Yeah.
Right.
Yet Eric says Emoto's science is real, and credits him with explaining how magic spells seem to work. Eric promotes the idea that John Hagelin lowered the crime rate in Washington, D.C. with his yogic flyers. Hagelin won the Ig Nobel Prize for this stunt, which is reminiscent of the Muslims' mass praying in public. It didn't work, of course, but it never was intended to. If you can bring a large number of people to Washington, D.C., house them, feed them, and get them to do things for you, that will get you noticed. Not surprisingly, Hagelin is politically active and has run for president as the political party associated with the Maharishi. And with the mention of the Maharishi, we are leaving the cast of What the Bleep now, but the theme of exploitation and corruption in the New Age movement and their intersection with Global One will continue. The Maharishi is an important person in EAB's life, and he credits the master with having turned Eric's life around. Too much of this kind of thing may not be good for Eric because he now teaches the Maharishi effect. That is, group meditation will affect the physical world. There is no evidence for the Maharishi effect, but there is evidence of a different kind of effect, that of the hive mind and totalitarian slave labor.
I'm here as the guest of Candace, her husband of Rogers Magic, two of the founders of Maharishi Vegas City. This looks like, I have to say, this looks like barracks. And I also think that there are some rather totalitarian strains that go on within the leadership of this movement, telling you exactly what you can do and can't do, and it's not as free-flowing as one might think from the outside. It's very controlled. And I particularly resent how these moments are being controlled and their lives are being controlled. I mean, if they are, in fact, these enlightened holy men who could teach us all a thing or two and are capable of bringing world peace, then they should be accorded a little more respect and confidence and allowed to, move about and see something of America. Why do you bring a large population like that and isolate it? Keep them confined, exactly. And also the living conditions. The argument has been made,
it does look like barracks. We have another picture here. They look just like barracks.
It is, and someone in the newsroom looked at that and said that does not.
Eric Allen Bell adores Deepak Chopra, who defrauded the Journal of the American Medical Association by writing an article on the beneficial qualities of a product, which turned out to be a proprietary of the Maharishi. Eric is big on Ken Wilber. Ken Wilber, in turn, is influenced by Adi Da. When it came to light that Adi Da was behaving like a cult leader, with reports of forced isolation, sexual abuse, and unpaid labor coming from former members of the group,
I got herpes from Dafri John.
Mary, who doesn't want her...
Ken Wilber had trouble denying that he had also been taken in by a phony guru. Eric sells the work of Greg Braden. Here is Greg Braden telling his followers they can wish away their cancer.
We can watch her cancer disappear in 3 minutes in the presence of the language that heals.
Jaggi, the yuppie guru, mixes spiritual with the material. In 25 years, CEOs will rule the world. He ought to know, since he meets with CEOs on golf courses or in seminars that teach the technology of spirituality to business leaders.
You're going to meet a man who has a devoted following across India and indeed around the world. Jaggi Vasudev, known simply as Sadhguru, the founder of the Isha Foundation, a non-religious, non-profit public service organisation that is operated by 2 million volunteers across 150 cities.
Once you have chosen market economy, there's no such thing as greed.
Next time, we take a look at Eric's shady businesses and his movies that no one has ever seen, as well as his claims of involvement in movies that don't mention him in the credits. That's all next time on Counter Jihad magazine.